Watch this.
The Boise Pride Festival has found itself at the center of expanding controversy. Their Kids in Drag event drew a lot of opposition, most notably from the Idaho Republican Party Chair Dorothy Moon, who has called the event sexualizing children, which led to a corporate sponsor, Zions Bank, to withdraw their participation from the festival. Chair Moon approved of the idea. She sent a release statement Thursday urging Idahoans to call businesses sponsoring Boise Pride and voice their disappointment, of course, if they feel that way. Now, which has led to more sponsors choosing to distance themselves from Boise Pride. This is a good time to bring in Andrew Bartline, who joined us live this afternoon from where groups online said they plan to protest Boise Pride. And Andrew, I'm curious, are there any protesters there right now? And what does it really mean if a sponsor pulls out of Boise Pride?
We'll get to that second half of that question in a moment. As for the group that says they were coming out and protest today, we saw one woman that was in front of the Capitol. She was near the bell holding a sign that had the 10 Commandments on it. She told us she's not just here protesting events like Kids in Drag involving children. She just says she's opposing Pride in general. It's unclear if she's a part of that online group because a lot of their rhetoric has been opposing Pride events specifically that involve children. But we'll show you the park right now if John Mark wants to pan the camera for us. It looks very normal. People setting up, a lot of people dressed in Pride gear, a lot of rainbow colors you'll see. I can show you right now what's abnormal though, Joe. You mentioned sponsors pulling out. Take a look at this right here on the main stage. They're cutting sponsors out of the banner. Now you mentioned Zions Bank pulling out. What does that mean? Well, from Boise Pride, it's not a one-size-fits-all. The people online are talking about people pulling out and taking their money with them, demanding they get a refund. That's not exactly what we're hearing, at least not anecdotally. Zions Bank was the first business to back out of Boise Pride over that Kids in Drag event. That was back on Wednesday. More businesses have followed, including Idaho Power, CapEd Credit Union, Idaho Central Credit Union, and the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. These businesses publicly stated they do not support Pride over events involving children, alluding to Kids in Drag. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're pulling their funding from Boise Pride, as they also pull their participation. We spoke with Matthew Montoya at Loomis Optical. He's a strong supporter of Boise Pride, and his company, who he co-founded, is a sponsor of Boise Pride. Montoya is in close contact with these Boise Pride organizers, and he's upset as this has become political, but also says sponsors withdrawing from Pride might not have as big of an impact on the event as you think.
When you have the Idaho GOP putting out their own statements about this, then you're making it way more partisan than it needs to be. The whole part that's sort of aggravating is how this has been framed and how this is being looked at. But nobody's asking you to bring your children, but why would you put that on to any other family that wants to be able to celebrate diversity? Zion Bank's statement was unfortunate, I think, and where they were approaching the situation. Idaho Power was more concerned about their employees because their employees are servicing these residents, or they don't know who they're servicing. So it was definitely more of a safety issue for their employees. Neither of those corporate sponsors pulled their funding. They only asked that their sponsorship be pulled from the website.
So not only are these sponsors being pulled from the website, but of course they're branding at the event themselves, as you can see there, that they are cut out. Now, we couldn't get an exact answer from Boise Pride what that means when a sponsor does pull out of Boise Pride and this event. The executive director, Donald Williamson, did tell us anecdotally with Zions Bank, they were the first ones. They pulled out, but they did not take their funding with them. When Zions Bank pulled out, they wanted to be removed from the website, wanted their branding removed, hence the cutouts. And now we also asked, what does this money go toward, all this sponsorship funds? We know that the top sponsor, Albertsons, donated at least $50,000. Where does this go to? Well, we got an answer from Williamson about that too. The number one thing is the main stage. That's where we're at right now. This thing costs money. There's a lot of people out here making this work, which is the second piece of this. The people who are running the event, the talent, things of that nature. The third biggest piece, Joe, and we talked about this earlier this week, is security. Boise Pride has private security they've hired to help them alongside Boise Police and Idaho State Police, who's going to be here as well. That private security is bigger this year heading into the event because of what we saw happen in North Idaho with 31 members from Patriot Front opposing being charged with conspiracy to riot at that event. So they're preparing for that heading into today, heading into this weekend. And of course, controversy has brought that further. Joe.
It's Andrew Bartline reporting for us on Friday evening. It'll be interesting to see if other sponsors drop during the weekend. We'll follow it closely for you. Thank you, Andrew.
Zion Banks out, Zion Cannabis in. What's better than that?
Well, the owner of Oregon's Zion Cannabis dispensary learned Thursday morning that Zion's bank had withdrawn its support of Boise Pride Festival. He knew there was just one thing to do. I mean, it was easy to see. It was literally spelled out for them. They didn't even have to change much of the marketing, just drop the S there. Zion's bank out, Zion Cannabis in. And as Joe Dunn just put it, with a donation of $10,000, which is actually more money than Zion's bank was kicking in to be a yellow level sponsor. Now, Joe told our Brian Holmes how they came to be Boise Pride's newest sponsor and why that $10,000 will be a welcomed and unfortunately necessary addition for this weekend's festival.
It was actually one of the quickest decisions I think we ever made. It's our understanding most of that additional funds are going to be going to security, added security, because of, just some of the threats that we've heard about, with this festival, unfortunately. So we're happy to do it.
Added security. I guess the question is it shock you that that's necessary?
No, not necessarily. It's unfortunate. People have strong beliefs, and there's been a lot of misinformation out there. We're seeing a lot of the same anti-gay tropes that you've been hearing for decades in one form or another. The fact that there's so much hate going around and so many threats of violence at a First Amendment gathering is a little surprising. But again, this isn't anything new.
Zion's Bank was the first one to remove themselves from Boise Pride. So obviously that seemed like a perfect fit for you guys to slide in and not have to change much of the language.
Right. Yeah, there was an opening under Zion. So we just kind of jumped in. And to be honest, that was a spineless move. If you're going to come out and be a big sponsor and support Pride, you got to have at least a little bit of backbone. You can expect the anti-gay rhetoric to come out. And if you're not willing to stand up and support what's right in the face of misinformation, then maybe reconsider being a Pride sponsor in the first place.
Boise Pride organizers tell us they don't quite know what the added security will cost them this weekend. They told us that they budgeted between $30,000 to $35,000, an increase of about $15,000 over last year. But when you add in the recent threats against the festival, the costs, well, they have to keep adding up because they want to keep it safe. And they will likely find out the answer of how much the security costs by the end of the weekend. As for Zion Cannabis, they will have a booth set up in the park, and Joe told us that this won't be a one-off festival for them. He says they plan to be Boise Pride sponsors for many years to come. Well, this week we've heard a lot from the community about what a drag show is, what they think happens at a drag performance, and what people expected to happen at the now canceled Kid Drag event. We've heard a lot from everyone, but the actual drag community themselves. Earlier, I sat down with Ash Jones, a member of the local drag and LGBTQ community here in the Valley. And as Ash spoke with me about the drag community and what it looks like in Boise, we also talked about what was actually planned for the now canceled event. We also chatted about the heightened controversy and attention now on the Boise LGBTQ community.
I have been a drag king and one of the founding members of the Lesbi Kings Drag Collective since 2019. So I've been a part of helping grow the drag king community and the awareness of it.
I think a real loaded question the last few days, maybe some debate on this. What is drag from a performer? What is drag?
Drag is an amazing expression of art. It dates back so many years, even centuries, that we have people that get to play with different personas, with gender, with anything that you can think of. It's an artistic expression, just like you would see in a theater or a play.
There's this comment, you're grooming children, you're setting children up there to strip for us. I don't think anyone, rationally thought that's really what's going to happen.
No, there is no way we would even allow something like that to happen. I've been a part of all ages shows before, and one thing that every person that's been a part of it, whether you're a performer or you're behind the scenes, the main tone that we want to keep whenever we have more than anybody that's over 18, if we're having if we have kids and so forth, we want to make sure that the tone is one that is in all ages, or radio friendly, if you will. We want to make sure that the songs are appropriate. There's not suggestive tones. The costuming is made to be something that you can maybe see at Disneyland or Universal Studios. It's got something that's more welcoming for everybody.
And kind of like, in movies, you can have a XXX R-rated movie. There are also rated G movies out there.
Exactly.
Is that a fair comparison? Movies and drag, it's just a whole spectrum?
That would be a perfect comparison. I would not take any of my nieces or nephews to certain movies that I would take my friends with. But there are still movies that I would go and take them, and I know they would enjoy seeing because they're meant for all ages.
What are you and members of the community feeling in recent days? I imagine it's been difficult.
A lot of anger. 100% a lot of anger, because these kids are heartbroken. These are kids that they wanted opportunities to be on stage and just be themselves. That is now taken from them. There are not a lot of opportunities or venues for them to do that. And there's a lot of sadness because now we're having to tell these kids, we're sorry for your safety. We either do not want to have you on the stage, or we're even questioning if we want them there because of all of the hate speech we've been hearing and all the threats. I've got my godniece that I'm even questioning bringing her to Pride at all because I don't want anything happening.
What was that event going to be? There's a lot of people that say this is what it's going to be. I know that's what they're going to do. As someone who's involved directly, what was that event going to look like?
What the event would look like is the parents of the kids would let their kids pick out whatever outfit they want to wear, do a little bit of makeup because they are on stage just like you would a play whatever song that child chose, and that child just gets to dance like they would a pageant or a recital, but they get to express themselves instead of having a structure. So in a recital, your instructor may have given you your costume, uniform, and so forth. The child gets to choose whatever they wanted, and that was it. As soon as they're done, they go off stage, they'd hang out with their parents or their family, go enjoy the rest of Pride. Same thing with drag story time. There was not going to be any children on stage for that. It would just be a couple performers in drag that would read the story out loud to the audience, just like spoken word or anything else.
Critics of Boise Pride and the now canceled performance are using images and videos from around the country to show their point that kids would be dancing and dressing inappropriately or be exposed to hypersexualized adults. Supporters of the event say this is a familiar playbook to them, being criticized without the full picture being shown.
If they're cherry picking, they're only going to be able to show the narrative that they want because they're not looking at the entire picture. They're not putting everything into context. What we do in bars such as the Balcony or Somewhere Bar is not what we would do in front of children.
The Idaho LGBTQ community is facing messages accusing them of grooming young children and being pedophiles in general. There are serious accusations that the drag and LGBTQ community in Boise say they are not a stranger to. Once again, they say they continue to defend themselves against outlandish claims that have no basis in reality.
We find, especially in our community, we've found everything from if you're an adult, they'll throw slurs out. If hateful words that obviously I'm not going to repeat, but I've heard several times in my life. When they can't get footing that way, they will go towards the vulnerable. We're protective of our children. They're going to try and hit us by attacking us and accusing us of things with our children because they know that's going to be something that will rile up and get angry. We will want to fight back because you're making a blatant accusation that is completely incorrect. But it's also because they don't understand things. If they don't know how to understand us, there's going to be that divide, and they're going to use everything that they can to try and get under our skin just to get their message across. When it comes down to it, the accusations themselves are not only blatant lies, but there's something that are very damaging and harmful because that takes away the spotlight from actual pedophiles, from actual people that could be harming children. So instead of going for where there is damage and trying to help those kids, they're putting light elsewhere where nothing is there.
To follow and read more about our extensive coverage of the controversy and the events surrounding Boise Pride, you can read all of our stories available right now at ktvb.com. The 208 will be back right after this. It's Friday. You know what that means. We're taking a look at the most popular segments of the week, and we want to talk about something that we got a lot of messages about and was talked about really across the country. On Wednesday, history was made for the Boise School Board, like the plot to a Disney Channel original movie. A high school kid wins an elected seat to the local school board, but that's a real storyline for the Boise School District after 18-year-old Boise High student Shiva Rajbandari beat sitting trustee Steve Schmidt by more than 2,000 votes. It may seem like an oxymoronic stretch to say that the school board election was an interesting one, with a right-wing group trying to push candidates of their own to push back from the other side of the spectrum. And the answer seemed to be Boise voters are just fine, very much, with what the things are going on in their school district. They like the direction, except for electing the high school kid. There has been some criticism about that. But what will this look like? Well, we talked to Shiva himself. Here's what he had to say. The Boise School District Board of Trustees election is in the book. 13 candidates ran in 4 races for 5 trustee positions. A first of its kind outcome in Boise, 18-year-old Boise High student Shiva Rajbandari beat incumbent Steve Schmidt in race 4 to earn a spot on the Board of Trustees.
Were you surprised that you won, or I guess what was your feeling going into the election?
I don't know. We were just we were knocking on doors. We knocked 2,000 doors this weekend out of like 5,000 total doors. So we were putting in the work for sure. But you know, you never know how an election is going to go, especially some of these local elections. And yeah, I was certainly super honored to have the trust of the voters.
And you're in a really unique position here where, I mean, as far as we can find, you're the only student that's ever been on the school board here. What do you think that balance is like of actually being a student in the district and then, you know, having the 50,000 foot view of being on the board?
I think it's super important. This campaign is about student representation, and we need it, students on our school board. 14% of large districts across the country have students on the school board, so this is just Boise schools getting caught up to the times, and I'm excited to set a precedent for, you know, student representation and a student vote on board decisions for hopefully generations to come.
Rajbandari is in a unique situation, sitting on a board with much different life and lived experience.
Our community came out very strongly that they like the direction that the district is going, and we're hopeful that we can just stay that course.
Beth Oppenheimer has served on the Boise School Board since 2016. She won another 6-year term in this latest election.
This election has really opened up our eyes to you know, where we can make improvements, what's going well, what's not going well, and we're going to just continue to make those improvements where we can and stay the course.
Oppenheimer says she's excited to work with Rajbandari, someone that will bring a new perspective and lens to the board.
Shiva's one voice on a 7-person board. I'm one voice on a 7-person board. And it's really about working as a team. And I look forward to it. You know, we have worked together as a team, the board historically, for the most part. We don't always agree, but it's really about working as a team.
Unique story aside, Rajbandari says his run and term on the board is not for show. He's there to make a difference.
I see a need, right? Student representation is something that all students deserve. Students should be at all places where decisions are being made, but especially where decisions are being made in education. And you know, I'm super lucky that, you know, the majority of the voters agree, and the majority of voters do believe that, you know, student voice is valuable and are willing to give us a seat at the table.
I'm interested to hear what his perspectives are and see how we can all come together and work together and continue to make advancements in the district.
Still, the fact that a current student is set to join the school board officially on Monday, it's a very unique situation.
I'm curious if you had a unique conversation with your parents about, okay, you're on the school board, but you still got to make the mark here.
Yeah, this morning, my mom pulled me aside. She's like, I need 15 minutes of your time. And it ended up being like a 2-minute conversation. She's like, you better be attending your classes. She's like, you know, because it really is such an honor to be a leader district-wide, as well as in my school. And it's certainly an example that I want to set for students, teachers, staff, and everyone. And I think it's a super vital role that I have to play, and I hope I can balance that well.
All members of the Boise School Board of Trustees will be installed this coming Monday. The 208 returns right after this.
We're starting off our Idaho forecast in Baja California, off the coast of Mexico. There's a tropical storm currently there, and right now it's bringing flooding rains to portions of Southern California. You can see the flood warnings are in red here, and the flood watches are all in green, really widespread, and some of that moisture is actually going to be making its way to Idaho. Later next week, we're not talking about anything immediate, but you can see a lot of that moisture is going to be confined to the eastern portion of the state. We will expect some of it in the next week or so on the western side of the state, but overall we're not looking at very much. This is over 6 days, so not a whole lot of moisture. But before we go into next week, let's talk about what we're seeing right now. There are currently air quality warnings in place for much of Idaho. There's only a few counties actually left out of it. There are also a few left out in the northern portion of the state, but that's going to be in place the entire weekend. We're just going to see lower air quality, where now the air is actually considered unhealthy. So you want to try to limit your time outside if you can. Tomorrow we're expecting a high of 87 degrees. We expect the smoke to stick through the weekend, and then later next week we see that wetter pattern that I mentioned with more seasonable temperatures. We'll be right back.
Few things to touch on before we put this show to bed. First, I want you to join us this Sunday morning for Viewpoint, 9 o'clock in the morning. We're on the road to the general election in November, and we're hearing from candidates in the race for United States Senate here in Idaho. Last week, we heard from Senator Mike Crapo. This week, we're going to hear from his challenger, Mr. David Roth. And Roth represents the Democrats on the ticket this election season. I spoke with Roth about the major issues and his thoughts on recent things. You can catch the show Sunday morning right here on KTVB at 9 a.m. And if you missed the show, you want to see it later, it'll be on ktvb.com and the KTVB YouTube page. A little clip for you right there. Of course, you couldn't hear what we're saying, so tune in on Sunday morning to hear that. We saw a lot of your comments today. We're not going to have time to get into them right now, but here's what I do want to say. If you are going to go to Pride this weekend, enjoy your time. If you're not going to go to Pride this weekend, that's great too. The thing here is that everyone needs to be responsible this weekend and think critically. We are neighbors, we are brothers, we are sisters, we are fathers, we are sons, we are daughters. We are community members that live here in Boise. We should treat each other with respect at all times. I'll get off the soapbox. See you next week.